You're watching Extras from the Extension on Eagle Community Television. This show is brought to you by Carico Implement.
Hello, I'm Stacy Campbell with K-State Research and Extension of Ellis County, and I've got JP Michaud with me here this afternoon. JP is one of the entomologists here with K-State Research and Extension. He's housed at the experiment station in Hayes, and as you can tell, we're standing out here in a field of grain sorghum, and there's been a lot of discussion about the sugarcane aphid here in Kansas. Definitely been a problem further south of us. To our friends in Oklahoma and Texas have certainly had some issues with it in the last several years, and we're starting to see more of it here in Kansas. Right now in this field we do have some sugarcane aphids here in Ellis County. Thus far we're finding low levels of them, but JP, what do you want to tell the audience today about the sugarcane aphid? Some of the things that they should be aware of when they're out scouting their fields, and if they do find them.
Well, we don't have a lot of experience with this insect in Kansas yet, and so what we are seeing is we will have problems with the aphid. Our plants tend to get further developed before they get infested. So we don't get the aphid until much later, and that really helps us. Because if we get a lot of growth on the plant, it takes the aphids a long time to build up underneath the plants, kill the lower leaves, move up to higher leaves, and eventually they will move up into the heads, and they will damage the developing grain. However, at this time of year, we're getting cooler overnight temperatures, and that really makes a big difference. That slows the aphid down tremendously. Gives the natural enemies a chance to eat them up. We have a lot of lady beetles and lacewings and everything eating them up. So if you do find them, the first question you want to ask yourself, how many plants in the field are really infested with established aphid colonies, with honeydew like you can see on these plants? And very often it's just a small pocket, you know, of plants where the aphid kind of gets a foothold. So the magic number we're using is 30% of plants at reproductive stages. So unless you have 30% of plants with established aphid colonies, you're probably going to be okay.
Through the entire field on an
average. Through the entire field on average. That means you look at least 4 or 5 different spots in the field.
Yeah, and right here we're in a hot spot, but as we walked further into the field, it kept decreasing and diminished down to only a few. So right now, currently, this field doesn't really need to be sprayed, but a producer would need to keep an eye on it.
Absolutely.
This field's probably a little further behind than some of our other fields in the county. In other words, some of them are definitely further along in their maturity process. So this is a field I guess you definitely would want to keep an eye on, compared to if most of the field is turned color and is in the soft dough to dough stage.
Technically, or potentially, the grain is at risk until it does turn color. So here we've got some pollination still occurring. These plants are definitely still vulnerable, potentially. However, what we have not seen, which has been a problem in the south, is these harvest problems that come when the aphids are heavily feeding up in the heads, fouling those heads with honeydew, getting the mold starting, and then you actually have so much sticky honeydew at a harvest that it actually impedes harvest. We're not seeing that yet. Will we see it? I can't say. But it seems to me that with the slower development of the aphid under cooler overnight temperatures, they seem to remain on the leaves. It takes them longer to feed and kill the leaves, and until they do that, they don't move up in the heads. Okay. So I'm hoping that we will avoid these harvest problems that seem to be a big worry for a lot of the growers.
Okay, yeah. And I don't know, when we get down into the very southern tier counties in Kansas, Sedgwick County and some of those, they've been dealing with them for a while. Have you heard, last year they dealt with them. Were there any harvest issues down there?
Well, and not that I know of, no, but there were definitely some heavier populations. They're having more serious infestations, but they're also getting earlier. They're getting them earlier simply because they're further south. Right. So these aphids will not overwinter here. So every year they're going to be blowing up on the winds from Texas. And so, we're probably Kansas is probably going to be the northern limit of the problem, and I don't expect it to be as severe as it is in the south, where the crop is maturing under hot conditions and those aphids are reproducing really quickly and feeding and producing a tremendous amount of honeydew, which is a physical harvest impediment.
Okay. All right. Well, is there any other last minute comments before we're?
Just the other thing to continue to consider if you do have a lot of aphids and you are worried about maybe thinking you have to spray, the materials that you can use are Transform and Savanto, which are labeled for this use, and they're very effective. However, again, temperature plays a role, and we're finding reduced efficacy. So you need to consider, first of all, how many plants are infested. Second of all, how far along is your crop? And third of all, what is that crop going to make?
Right.
And then you can figure out what you can afford to invest in protecting it, because these materials aren't cheap. And so the point is, if it's getting cold, those aphids are going to slow down, and guess what? Your insecticides aren't going to work as well either.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, this is something we haven't touched on, but if you are scouting for them, you're going to look for kind of that honeydew substance on the leaf, which I'm telling guys is
well, you can
like
see.
It's almost,
see it's just glistening with honeydew.
Yes.
This will be excreted by the aphids that have been on the leaf above, and you can see. These are established. An established colony is going to be anything with 150, 200 aphids. Well, there's over 1,000 aphids on that leaf. So.
Okay. But like you were saying, we're seeing this thus far here in Ellis County in this area in low levels. We're seeing a lot of beneficials. The weather's cooling down or starting to, so that slows them down. Nighttime temperatures get below 60, and it really takes them a while to get started back up the next day.
That's just it. They have to wait for the field to warm up before they'll begin.
And if you've got sorghum that's probably further along, like quite a bit of it is, in comparison to this field we'd like to see a little further along. That also helps in maybe kind of outrunning those sugarcane aphids, if you will. So anyway, producers, do get out there and scout your fields. And if you've got some questions, you can holler at JP out at the Hayes Ag Research Center or to your local extension agent. This has been Stacy Campbell with K-State Research and Extension and JP Michaud and Eagle Community Television.
You're watching extras from the Extension on Eagle Community Television. This show is brought to you by Carico Implement.